Tying together the areas of a game is a task that can be accomplished in many ways, from simple menus to overworld maps to abandoning the concept of individual levels altogether in favour of one seamless open world. Video games over the years have taken many different approaches to solving this conundrum. One that stands out above the rest is the hub world, a central, interactable, story-driven environment that brings together smaller levels and serves as a home, a respite for the player. When executed well, they provide a game with cohesion and unity, but that begs the question, what makes a good hub world? How's it going everyone, and welcome back to the Loading Zone, where today I'm joined once again by a very special guest. I'd like to give a warm welcome to the one and only Slaghetti Man.
Hello everyone, thank you Fiber, thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure my friend, and to kick things off, I have a bit of a question for you.
Go on.
What is the first location that comes to mind when you think hub world?
Well, for me, nothing strikes Hub World more than the definitive one on the N64. Peach's Castle in Mario 64.
The one and only.
It's so definitive. Not only is it a 3D platformer, because it was the first of its kind, it introduced us to hub worlds, I feel.
Yeah, it was one of, if not the very first hub worlds in gaming as a whole. And just for being the pioneer of that concept, I think it deserves a lot of credit.
It does. It does. Especially, as we said, it's the first of its kind. You need somewhere else to check your moves out, see what you're doing. Brand new world.
Of course, because if you're thrown straight into a first level with no preparation, especially in a genre-defining game like Super Mario 64 where you've got unfamiliar controls, then you're gonna struggle, but being placed in a little hub world like Peach's Castle, a small contained area, gives you a chance to figure out yourself and orientate yourself with the controls.
True. And it might not seem like the most interesting place now because we've seen Peach's Castle a lot, but before then it wasn't ever included anywhere. And it does its job very well. It introduces you to that 3D environment. And
yeah, I feel like that's so easy to take for granted nowadays. You play through Super Mario 64 so many times and you just forget how revolutionary Peach's Castle was.
Yeah, and all the different rooms inside of it taking you to different areas. I think it's just a genius idea.
I think as well, like, the idea of jumping into paintings to get to the different worlds, that was super creative as well, because of course naturally you find paintings hung around as decorations in castles and buildings, so it just feels seamlessly integrated, and the feeling of just jumping through for the first time and seeing the painting ripple entering Bob-omb Battlefield is something really special. And I think the further you delve into Peach's Castle, the more they sort of play with that mechanic. Like in the basement you've got shifting sandland, which is like a wall as opposed to a painting, and then on the top floor there's all those different paintings, and some of them lead to worlds, some of them don't, so it's fun to figure out like where the entrances to the worlds lie.
Yeah, there's one really creative one for Tiny Huge Island where you walk down that corridor and it looks like you're getting tiny, or the other one where it looks like you're getting smaller, but it's just a really clever trick done by the developers.
Very cool illusion, yeah.
And I think Peach's Castle, there is a real sense of progression in it as well, because you're exploring and you're opening up all these different rooms that you couldn't get to before. You probably get to explore the entire castle, and I just think that's neat.
Yeah, you sort of have to explore it in a certain order, although it's not completely linear as such. It's just by getting stars you open up more and more of these secret rooms like you were saying. And speaking of secrets, there's all these secret stars and hidden things to find as well, like the secret slide for one, the aquarium in the Dia Docks room, or Jolly Roger Bay room, sorry, the wing cap from looking up into the ceiling when the light's shining down.
Yeah, and the booze in the courtyard.
Oh yeah.
I always thought that was really cool. Used to scare me a lot though.
Oh yeah.
Walking down that corridor and suddenly there's just a big fat boo there.
So many times I always tried chasing after him, but of course you can never catch up.
Yeah, always ended up head first into that back door.
Bonking right into it, yep. Too many times.
One thing that I'm not a huge fan of in the Mario 64 hub world is that it is done quite well with some of the paintings. But some of the rooms do just lead to nowhere. Like there's one room that's just a corridor with a painting at the end, with the first Bowser fight where you fall through the floor.
Oh right. It was a cool little gimmick, because that one, it really subverts your expectations a bit, because you've been conditioned to expect that when you jump into a portrait, you enter a new world, but there, as you walk towards it, it changes from Peach into Bowser, and then you get debated. You land in the Bowser world. So in a way, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely does make for a cool little gimmick there. I just do think that some rooms, don't know, I didn't know it's the first of its kind, but what are they going to use the corridor for? At least for a painting.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's a cool concept, the falling through the floor. I definitely did like that. I always used to try and skip across and then...
bonk into the invisible wall.
Yeah. But Nintendo really knocked it out of the park on the first go, really.
Yeah, it was a home run.
Yeah, they perfected that even further when they moved on to the GameCube for Mario Sunshine.
Ah yeah, Delfino Plaza, man. Gotta be one of my favourite hub worlds in any video game.
Yeah, and I know that Mario 64 is always going to be seen as that definitive one, and Sunshine's always a little bit troublesome in the minds of some people, but Delfino Plaza is a really cool location.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, in a game called Mario Sunshine, it does get a bit overshadowed, but it's a great place. I mean, just even in terms of navigation and movement, it just feels so fluid. Like, I know people have qualms with this, but I really like the way Mario moves in Sunshine, how tight the controls feel, and Delfino Plaza just lets you have so much fun with that. Like, you can do parkour on the roofs, you can dive around everywhere, and just getting from point A to point B never feels boring.
I completely agree. There's so many different areas and walls you can bounce off just to get used to these new controls, because they are a lot tighter than 64's ones. It just, as you say, it feels so fluid, and there's so many different things you can do, and especially when you get access to the different nozzles, when you can then zoom across the water and go over to different islands, or blast on top of the
big tower with the shine.
Yeah, and furthermore, going on from 64, that sense of progression is very clear in Sunshine. As you said, it's overcast and shadow when you get there, and you brighten up the island.
Yeah, because with each shine you get, the brightness slowly gets up to the point where an NPC appears offering you sunglasses to dim things down a bit. So that's a cool aspect of it, the idea of the things you do in the main world actually affecting the hub and giving you a sense of progression.
Yeah, not just the physical hub either, is it? Because it really rewards you for talking to all these different Piantas that are hanging around the village. Village?
Yeah, the plaza, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so as you said about the sunglasses, man, and then as you go on, people move about the island. They're in different locations, say different things depending on what you've just done.
And then by helping them out, you get rewarded with blue coins, sometimes even shines, like with that dude in the room with all the boxes where you have to ground pound everything.
Yeah.
And there's the guy who throws you into the tower where you get a shine.
Through the window.
Through the window, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, and then you can see one example that I can think of is there's that cannon in the corner that sends you over to the Pinner Park, I think it's called.
Yeah, Pinner Park.
And when you first get there, there's a man inside the cannon who's tinkering away at it, trying to get it to work. Then eventually, obviously, he gets out of there because you got to go in there and he's finally done fixing it. Or also, on top of that, place behind the fountain, there's the pineapple sticking out the red pipe.
Ah, yeah.
And you've got no idea how to get through it until you finally unlock Yoshi and you can go to Serena Beach. There's just so many cool little secrets, and I always thought it was so cool.
And what you said about Pinner Park as well with the cannon reminded me about how you can actually see the other worlds from the hub world, and that's the thing that's carried throughout the whole of Mario Sunshine, wherever you are. And it just makes the whole area feel so interconnected. It makes Isle Delfino feel like an actual place.
Definitely. They did that so well, that world building. I know it's weird to think about in a Mario game, but you can see everything. Even where you first started on the airstrip, you can see that just vaguely off in the distance. And obviously you got Corona Mountain sitting in the back.
Always looming over you, yeah.
I always thought that was really neat.
So I suppose after Sunshine, we move on to, naturally, Galaxy, where we saw the Comet Observatory. And I do have pretty mixed feelings about this one, I have to say.
Yeah, I agree on you there. It's cool, but there's not much to do.
It's got like this quite whimsical atmosphere to it. It feels magical almost, but like you said, it's pretty empty, it's pretty barren. Compared to Delfino Plaza, say, there's a lot less hidden secrets to find and a lot less fun you can have there, because it really just serves the purpose of connecting the different domes and terraces, whatever they're called, together without having much more substance to it.
I think that is down to Galaxy being a completely different game to Sunshine and 64 and how it plays, really, because it's much more linear. So as you said, it just serves the purpose of getting to these smaller levels. So there's a lot less kind of parkour, as we spoke so fondly about in Sunshine and 64. I mean, sure, you can bounce off a few different places, but it's just, you can just walk about, really. Get to where you need to go. There's a couple of cool little areas, like the garage with the Turd Brigade ship that builds up over time. I always thought that was pretty cool. I did like how each area was dimmed off at first in darkness. And then as you get more power to the ship, then each of these different areas gets power. I always thought that was a really neat concept though.
And you'd see like the big power source in the middle getting bigger and bigger the more stars you get, or the more grand stars you get rather. And I suppose what goes hand in hand with the observatory getting more power is the music getting more and more layers added to it. So I think there's something like 3 or 4 variations of the Comet Observatory music that you get to listen to, and you hear more and more instruments being added in each time.
Yeah, I love Rosalina's observatory music. I just think it's, especially when it gets to I think it is 3, the third version, when everything just comes in together, the whole like band. It's magical.
Chef's kiss.
It might not have all that, substance or things to do, but I don't know. There's just something when it gets all full. There's all the lumers that start floating about and filling up all the areas. All the different beams are across everywhere, and it's all connected. It's nice.
It is, yeah. It's a nice vibe.
Very true. Unfortunately, though, in Mario Galaxy 2, it took a step even further away from what we loved so much about Mario Sunshine.
They kind of went in the opposite direction to Galaxy 1 and changed it from sort of a big void-like empty space to something very, very compact.
It definitely serves its purpose. It's just there. It's a small, contained space, and that is it, really. There's nothing else to do on there apart from get to the level, talk to a couple of the NPCs. There is a little power-up room, I guess, and a little bonus game, but I don't know. I've got very mixed feelings on it.
It's unfortunate because you can't even walk around to the different levels because you just navigate through them on a map screen. So yeah, it's kind of sad in that respect.
Yeah, you didn't even have the pull star kind of thing that you had in Galaxy 1.
No.
And, well, it does look kind of cool. I don't know. I know some people aren't really a big fan of Starship Mario, but I always think it had some charm.
Yeah, although I will say, Lubber is a bit of a downgrade from Rosalina in terms of main focal character of the hub world.
He's definitely more lighthearted. I quite liked him, but I do always prefer Rosalina. I think she's just so much better than Lubber.
Yeah.
But Lubber does have his moments.
Yeah, he does.
I do wish he'd stop telling me to charge my Wii remote though and take a break.
That is a fire moment right there.
Something about the Wii, man.
It does have its redeeming qualities though, Starship Mario. Like, it also does the music thing, like Comet Observatory. And I guess when you go to the different galaxies, you get NPCs from that galaxy visiting the ship, so it slowly gets more and more populated over the course of the game, so there is some element of progression to it.
That is true. I forgot that they'd come from the different galaxies that you visited. I had forgotten about that part, where they'd come home with you. I thought
you get the little penguin dude and the wood chip guy.
Yeah,
I've forgotten what he's called, but
wood chip guy is fine enough.
Wood chip guy, yeah. We'll stick with that.
And the Turd Brigade also do come back as well. At some point, you have to get Yoshi, who appears on Mario's nose. You swing on up to them, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, it has its moments, has its own charm. But I do miss the days of Mario Sunshine, because that is the last Mario 3D hub world.
Yeah, because even in Odyssey, unfortunately, we don't have a hub world, which is a crying shame in my opinion.
It is something I will miss about the Mario games, because I know 3D World and 3D Land cemented in that fact that they were gone. It was getting more and more linear. Odyssey, I did have hope when it first came out, but the most we get is a brief look in the inside of the Odyssey, which really is not that big at all.
No.
You can fill it up with all the memorabilia though, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, when you buy stuff with the purple coins, you can decorate it a little bit, but
I'm not really sure that counts as a hub world though, unfortunately. Just a little breakaway.
Maybe we will see them return in a future Mario game, potentially. It is wishful thinking, because I suppose games generally are moving away from the direction of individual levels and more towards open worlds, but hey, man can dream.
Very true.
Yeah, I suppose while we're on the Mario train of thought, it's got me thinking, are there any non-main series Mario games that you think have good examples of hub worlds?
Well, one that definitely comes to mind to me personally is kind of a weird one because it's a mix between a 2D hub world and a 3D hub world. So on the Wii, they also released a quite controversial Paper Mario game.
Very divisive one. I mean, they do tend to be, don't they, Paper Mario games?
Yeah, called Super Paper Mario.
Yep.
And you are based in this little town called Flipside. So that is your base of operations. You always go in there, you go up to the top and you select the different worlds and levels from there. So it's a gateway basically. And there's quite a lot to do there. And obviously it's an RPG. You can go to shops, you can find some little dungeon areas, speak to different characters, get some information, fill out all your different Egg MacGuffin type little statues to just progress the story. But one thing that particularly stands out to me in Super Paper Mario is the Flipside, which is a mirrored version of that hub world, which you can access at some point in the story. It's a required part of the story.
Right.
And Super Paper Mario basically has this whole idea of the light against dark, and Flipside is a physical representation of that to Flipside. Flipside. There's a lot of confusing terms there.
Yep.
But it's a mirror image and it's a dark world. It's got a darker type music, different variations of the characters that you see in the main world. I always thought it was really cool. It always used to creep me out as well.
Oh, right. So is it sort of like a Link to the Past type of thing, or a Link Between Worlds, where you've got the light world and the dark world, which are sort of equivalents of each other?
Yeah, basically, because all these characters are mirrored in this other world. There's different versions of the same character, just with different names or plays on words. It's just the whole world is basically inverted. Completely, like, perfectly mirrored. And all these characters. I think the music's the main point for me, because it's got a completely different tone. It's really well done.
Yeah, music can make such a big difference. Just giving a place a completely different atmosphere.
Very true. How about you? Are there any Mario spin-offs that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned Super Paper Mario, I also thought of Paper Mario Thousand Year Door on the GameCube.
Oh, yeah.
The sort of hub world there is Rogueport, which you jump into immediately at the start of the game. And what I really like about this one is just how unsettling it is and how completely unique it is for a Mario game, because as soon as you get there, there's just a set of gallows staring you in the face in the middle of the town square. And Rogueport is sort of a rundown city of crime. And it's so, like, edgy, so mysterious compared to the sort of happy-go-lucky places you'd normally find in a Mario game. In fact, I think in the Japanese version, they straight up have a chalk outline of a Toad's body in there, so...
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
It's pretty creepy.
It definitely subverts your expectations.
In spite of that generally darker tone, it still makes you want to explore it. You still want to look deeper into it, because it's got an interesting backstory to it. So I think there was originally a town called Rogueport, like this current one, but that was ruined. There was some evil power that destroyed it or something. But what you can actually do is go into the underground sewer system, and there you find the ruins of what used to be the original town. Yeah, it's just a cool story point, I suppose. And the more you do in Thousand Year Door, the more abilities you get, the more of Rogueport you can explore. So you gain the ability, for example, to rotate, to roll up into a tube. You get different companions, like a baby Yoshi who can let you flutter jump, and a Bob-omb who can blow up walls. So all of those different characters and new moves you can use let you uncover parts of Rogueport that you'd never seen before. That, I think, is so cool.
I completely agree. It really caught me off guard the first time I played the opening of Thousand Year Door. I haven't delved too far into the game, but what I have seen of Rogueport, I was really enticed by. And I always think it's so cool when there's little backstories to worlds you visit in games, and having it as your kind of base hub that you can expand and visit different areas of throughout the game.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
I suppose if we're going down a completely different angle on the Mario front still, one very peculiar one that I can think of off the top of my head is Mario Superstar Baseball. Now, when you think of hub worlds, you wouldn't exactly think of a Mario sports game, right? Like, it's a very odd thing for a sports game to have a hub world, but Mario Superstar Baseball does it, and in my opinion, it does it pretty well as well. The hub world is essentially the map of the story mode, and at the beginning you have to pick a captain to play the game as, so I think there's a choice of 5: Mario, Peach, Yoshi, Donkey Kong and Wario. And depending on which captain you pick, you start at a different point on the hub world in your designated stadium, and you have to walk around, challenge all of the other captains in their different stadiums in whatever order you want. But I think it's really cool how each character has their own little section of the map that they start off in, their own side character who you can play mini games with. Like Mario has a Pianta, Yoshi has a Shy Guy, Peach I think has a Toad.
That does sound like a really cool concept. Just being able to walk about that. It's the sense of interactivity that you get.
Yeah, like, rather than having just a menu to select a stadium, select an opponent, and just play a game of baseball, you actually have, like you said, this interactable environment that you can actually walk around in. And further adding to that level of interactability is Bowser Jr., who will just be wandering around, and if you bump into him while you're trying to get to the next stadium, then he just challenges you to a little one-on-one mission.
Oh, wow.
It can get quite tricky towards the later stages of the game, so you do have to be careful sometimes. You might want to dodge around and avoid him. But what's interesting is that basically if you beat a captain and manage to recruit them but fail to recruit the other members of the team, Bowser Jr. kind of steals those team members who didn't get recruited for his own team.
Of course he does.
And the only way you can get them is by fighting him, so it kind of forces you to do that a few times.
Yeah, make sure interact with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Super Mario Party on Switch has got a similar kind of concept with walking around to select the different modes and different games.
Oh yeah?
So when you start up, obviously after you selected your character, it's not too incredible, but there's the different game modes obviously that you can walk up to and select there. But you can walk around the map and talk to some characters, and I'm pretty sure you can buy some things too. And again, as you said, just being able to walk around instead of just selecting it from a menu, I feel like that's got a much better effect. It's just always quite nice.
Yeah, it's a lot more engaging.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, on the line of hub worlds where you least expect them, there's another one I have in mind here, which is Timber's Island, the hub world of Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh yeah.
Because for one, Diddy Kong Racing was a straight-up adventure game. It had a full-on story, which in itself is completely out of left field for a racing game. But not only did it have this story, but in classic Rareware fashion, it also had a hub world with lots of collectibles to find. They turned a racing game into a collectathon, essentially. But it's really cool. You traverse through different terrain using a car, a hovercraft, and a plane, so you might need to go over water with the hovercraft or fly up to a higher ledge with the plane. Granted, it is pretty simple, but I don't think it needs to be overly complex for a game like Diddy Kong Racing.
Well, yeah, Diddy Kong Racing doesn't even need a hub world at all, does it?
So for it to have one at all is amazing.
A major selling point.
Yeah. And it does something with the hub world that I really, really like, and is seen in a few other games, and that's that when you approach each smaller level, the area surrounding them is sort of thematically fitting. So there's like a snowy area outside the snow level, for example.
Yeah.
Or the beach level is on a tropical island in the hub world. And each of those sub-areas, if you like, has its own unique music, which further adds to that little effect.
It's a lot more engaging, as you said earlier on about one of the Mario spin-offs. It's nice, basically.
Yeah.
And it really puts you in that world, and especially in a racing game. Like, you don't need any of that, but the fact that they did it, it's just incredible.
Yeah, they really went the extra mile there.
Yeah, why wouldn't I want to explore in a car? Like, or whatever the hell it is in Diddy Kong Racing.
It's just fun to drive around. Like, even if you don't have a specific goal or objective in mind, you can just drive around at your leisure, and occasionally you might find a hidden golden balloon, because there are a few of those tucked away in little secret corners.
Yeah.
So it's very nice.
It is something I wish that Mario Kart would take on board, honestly.
Maybe in Mario Kart 9 when that eventually happens. We might be waiting a while, but hey.
Mario Kart 8 Deluxe will probably come out before then, let's be real.
Yeah, Deluxe Ultimate Director's Cut, all of that.
Yeah.
It just makes me wish that we got that fabled Diddy Kong Racing sequel that was scheduled to happen at one point, but then just sadly disappeared as a result of the severance between Nintendo and Rareware.
Yeah. Oh well. But on the similar wavelength to that theming that you mentioned a minute ago, with the different islands or different places on the map, there'll be a tropical island and a tropical themed area of the hub world.
Yeah.
Kirby and the Forgotten Land kind of does that. So as you're flying around on the TriStar, you fly around over a different overgrown world, obviously, and there's different points for you to enter a level. And there's a couple where you'll fly over an area and you'll enter a level, and the level that you enter will be similar to the surroundings that you selected it on.
Right.
So I always thought that was pretty cool in my playthrough. But that's not particularly too hub world, but Kirby and the Forgotten Land does actually have a proper standard hub world, which I always thought was pretty cool.
Is that like the town?
Yeah, the town, the Waddle Dee town. So as the game progresses, you collect more and more Waddle Dees as you go out throughout the levels, and the more you get, the more populated the town gets, and the more buildings open, and the more built up it gets from being run down. So it's not a massive hub world. You can't really do too much in there, apart from go to some shops, upgrade some items, etc. But it works for what it is, and I always thought it was pretty cute.
Yeah.
Seeing all the Waddle Dees doing their jobs.
It just makes me want to play that game now, because I just haven't gotten around to it.
Kirby definitely does have a lot of charm, and he always has done, really, because even in his first couple of games, even the 2D ones, Kirby has a hub world.
Right.
So again, it's not too expansive, but you can walk about to select the different levels instead of it just being a one-to-one next level kind of progression.
Like a 2D Mario type of thing.
Yeah, you actually walk about and you have to find these different areas with the doors, with the levels, which is, again, it's just a lot more preferred to just being a menu.
For sure,
I don't know about you.
No, I feel the same way.
Some Sonic games also do this kind of thing. You ever played Sonic Advance?
Oh, I've got Sonic Advance 1. I'm not sure if that one has a hub.
Sonic Advance 3 definitely does.
Right.
Which, again, like the Kirby one, you walk about to find these different areas, and you can move about it with the different characters in different ways. Because in Sonic Advance 3, you can swap between the different pairings of characters. So, depending on which character you select, you can traverse this hub world in different ways. If you've got Tails, you can just fly about somewhere. Knuckles, you can climb up the walls. And Sonic and Amy, you can do that momentum-based platforming. I always thought that was really neat. It just sprung to my mind just then.
Yeah.
And again, depending on the different zones and which axe you're on, the world around it changes. So there's multiple hub worlds in that game, which I always thought was really good concept.
Yeah, there's lots of different approaches to making a hub world. So some games stick with going with one big one, whereas others divide it into smaller ones. And I suppose another series that does that is Spyro. I think all 3 games in the original trilogy did this, where they have 4 or 5 different hub worlds, each of which contains its own set of levels. But to me, what's cool is that the hub worlds themselves sort of count as actual levels in themselves, because they have 300 odd gems that you have to find in them, and collecting those does contribute towards the percentage total. So in order to complete the game, you have to complete the hub worlds as well, which forces you to explore them pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, hub worlds don't just have to serve that purpose, do they? Just being a select a level.
No.
There can be things that are required for the actual story that allows you to do more things there than just walk in through a door, walk through a painting, jump through a graffiti spot. Did you say Spyro does that? It really used to confuse me, Spyro's hub worlds. I'm not sure I ever actually went into a level in Spyro, to be honest, but
I'm pretty sure they're just marked out by gates that you sort of just walk through.
Yeah, I remember the gates, but I don't ever remember going through the gates. Oh well. A bit too confusing for a Sliggetti Man brain.
Yeah, perhaps.
But speaking of using hub worlds for other purposes and just go from level to level and actually having a significant role towards the game, what about Skyward Sword?
Oh man, yeah, you raise a good point with that one. Skyloft, my beloved, man. What a lovely place.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how much it really counts as a hub world, but I think it does, to be honest.
Yeah, it's about where you draw that line, where you make that distinction, but I think Skyloft does fall into the category, because it doesn't necessarily act as a passageway through which you get to the different worlds or the different parts, like Faron, Eldon, and Lanayru, but it does serve as a hub, in a sense, that you return to when you complete different objectives, when you finish dungeons. It's always the place that you come back to, so in that respect, yeah, it is a hub, a central hub.
Yeah, and there's so much to do there. You can progress the story there as well, and as you said, you do go to these other locations via Skyloft. You always return back to Skyloft. So it might not be the typical kind of passageway to travel between these worlds, but it's your home.
Yeah,
Literally.
Yeah. It just has such a homely feel, and I think one of my favourite parts about it is the fact that, well, Skyward Sword is a game with a very, very long intro, and a lot of that intro takes place in Skyloft. So because of that, you sort of familiarise yourself with the town and all of the inhabitants, so you see those characters in the Knights Academy, you see the dynamic between Zelda, Link, and Groose, and yeah, you immediately feel as if, yeah, this is home, like you said. It's just a very peaceful atmosphere. I kind of want to live there, honestly. Apart from, like, the impending death that could await you if you fall off.
Yeah. It does genuinely feel like a lived-in world, though, which I would think they pulled off really well, like you were saying.
Yep. You do get quite involved in a lot of these characters' lives as well. Like, all of the students in the Knights Academy, they feel like real people, and they all have these side quests going on. There's the whole love letter situation.
Oh, yeah.
There's that guy Fledge, who's not very confident, he's a bit weak, and you help him to get stronger and work out. Even like the item storage girl in the bazaar who like falls in love with you, and you have to choose whether to like break her heart or reciprocate the feelings.
World building is a really good talent in Nintendo's, I feel, and they pulled it off so well in Skyward Sword.
They did, they really did.
I guess some of the other Zelda games do have some as well, like Termina in Majora's Mask, you know?
Clock Town.
There's a lot of good world building there.
For sure, it's like arguably even the best example across the entire Zelda series. Because Majora's Mask, obviously, it runs on the 3-day cycle, and that time mechanic is most apparent, most central in Clock Town, because all of the people that live there, all of the NPCs, they're all scheduled to do certain things at each time of the day. They all go about their daily activities like clockwork almost. It's really interesting to see because on the first day, everyone seems so relaxed, so laid back. But then as they begin to realize that the moon is crashing down on them, you start to see them all cope in different ways. You see some of them panic, completely freak out, and then others just completely deny it's happening. And what reflects that is the music changing each day. So the Clocktown Day 1 music, it sort of reflects that feeling of blissful ignorance that the characters have. The way that they're just living happily, but then it gets more and more foreboding and ominous each day as the moon gets closer and closer.
Yeah, they can really tell some pretty good stories with just the way that they changed slightly the world you spend the most time in, really. It is quite incredible how much they actually got right on the N64 for hub worlds.
Yeah, considering how experimental it must have been and how little they had to go on, it's impressive what they pulled off.
And I imagine there's one that you've been dying to talk about.
Yeah, I've been sitting on this one for a while.
Yeah.
My favorite hub world on the entire Nintendo 64 library, you know, the Superman 64 city. It's just such a great place to fly through, you know, flying through all those rings is so exhilarating. I love that game so much, man.
But what else? What else would it be?
Of course, yeah, it couldn't be anything else. But no, seriously, Banjo-Kazooie, man. Gruntilda's Lair was the hub world of that game, and it was just so good. I love Super Mario 64, don't get me wrong, but Banjo-Kazooie, it felt like a natural sort of evolution and refinement of what made Mario 64 so great, and that extends to the hub world itself. So Gruntilda's Lair, it's a big place, it's a big world, but each individual room feels very condensed, so there's lots of platforming that you have to do to get around, which keeps it interesting and makes it feel like every room serves a purpose. And it does that thing that Diddy Kong Racing and Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, as you mentioned, do, where the areas before each level match them thematically. So with the ice level, Freeze Easy Peak, the level entrance is an advent calendar, which is just, it's brilliant. And it blends the hub with the levels so well. And again, it has different music for each of those sub-areas. And another way that that link between the main world and the hub world is reinforced is that there's these switches that you can find in each level with Gruntilda's face on them. And when you hit them, it makes a Jiggy spawn in the hub world. So yeah, there's sort of a puzzle you need to solve to get each one. So for example, one of them spawns a Jiggy in a statue of Gruntilda's eye, and you have to fly into that eye to smash it and get the Jiggy. It's very nice. And on the line of secrets, there's just another example that comes to mind. You've got the Cheeto spellbooks, which are so well hidden. And uncovering those for the first time is so rewarding because you've gone through this small, obscure little pathway that you wouldn't initially think to explore. And there you find this guy who's straight up called Cheeto, who gives you cheat codes which you can use to double your egg count, your feather count.
Very nice.
So it's just a really good reward for exploring the hub world to its full potential. Something else about it is that, naturally, because it's Gruntilda's lair, you've got Gruntilda, the witch, who taunts you every single step of the way, so every so often she'll come up with a rhyme to straight up, like, insult you often. So that makes her sort of a constant presence, and you get a sense of her personality. It just builds her up as a villain, and it just makes the final fight against her right at the top of the tower all the more meaningful.
Just reminds you why you're actually jumping around and doing all these things.
Exactly, yeah.
I haven't specifically played too much of Banjo-Kazooie. I've only played a few hours of it on the Xbox. But what I did play and the entrances to levels, they're pretty good. I quite like them. There's so much character in the game. I think it's really well done.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend finishing it, for sure.
I'll get round to it. I'll get round to it. I swear. Bit of an oddball of a hub world that I can think of.
Go on.
You might not necessarily immediately come to mind when you mention the term hub world, but the Simpsons video game has a really good hub world.
You weren't kidding when you said it was when it was an oddball.
Yeah, not Nintendo, not Rare, not anything like that. No, EA produced this hub world.
I'd like to hear about this. You've piqued my interest with this one.
So I'm going to assume that you're relatively familiar with The Simpsons.
Yeah, vaguely.
So the hub world is their hometown of Springfield. It's a full kind of map, which I am a big fan of because I'm a big Simpsons fan. And you can just go into so many of these different locations and just find secrets, basically. And it's going to sound weird, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Simpsons game at all.
I am not.
It's a platformer.
Right.
It's an action platformer and kind of a collectathon as well. So each character, Homer, Marge, Lisa, and Bart, each of them have their own collectibles. So for Bart, I believe it's a Krusty type collectible. Homer has a Duff beer cap. Marge has a coupon. I've got no clue what Lisa's is. I think it's something to do with meditation. That's our whole gimmick in the game.
Yeah.
And they can only be accessible by those characters. So sometimes you might go to a location, you'll platform through it as Homer, and then you'll see, oh, there's a Marge collectible here. So you need to go back and then do it again for that character. And sometimes they can only be accessed by the certain characters as well. So sometimes you have to go up in a gust of wind with Bart and collect that collectathon that's up there. And this is all in the hub world.
Yeah.
So you can go in so many different places and so many iconic locations from the Simpsons, like franchise on the whole. So the church, Moe's Tavern, all the quite a few of the houses, the retirement home. I just think it's really cool.
I mean, yeah, for a Simpsons game published by EA no less, that really surprises me how much effort and love seems to have gone into that hub world.
Yeah, and that game does get quite overlooked, because one that you might have heard of, Simpsons Hit and Run.
Yes, I am familiar, yeah.
Yeah, that gets kind of put on a pedestal much more so than the Simpsons video game, which is quite a shame, because I've got a lot of memories of the game. And I just think it's got a lot of charm, especially in that hub world.
Yeah.
I really like it. And you can beat up all the characters as well, which is quite nice.
Always a plus, yeah.
So yeah, just a very, very full world from my experience as well. Any more hub worlds to you that particularly spring to mind?
I mean, you did mention different characters having specific items to collect, and
yeah,
that brought forth in my mind one game in particular, which isn't particularly fondly looked back on these days, but I think
right.
its hub world is one of its strongest aspects. So that's Donkey Kong 64, right? I think DK Isle is so cool, man. Whether it's just the music, the way you can explore it. I think one thing it nails and gets down to a T is the size. So it feels like the perfect size to walk around in. It's not too big to the point where you just get lost, but it's big enough so it doesn't feel small and unsatisfying. It just does a great job of A, tying the levels together, and B, providing you with a place that, again, much like Skyloft, feels a bit like home.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a contrast, because you've got DK's Isle, which is this happy, very friendly looking beach place, and then just across from there, you've got K. Rool's Island, which you can also explore, and that's, of course, quite the opposite. It has a more sinister feel to it, but both of them are like packed full to the brim with golden bananas for each Kong hidden behind grates or in secret passageways. And what's interesting is that there's something that sets DK Isle apart from the rest of the worlds in this game, and that's that there's one secret extra golden banana that you can get as Tiny Kong. I think it's for taking pictures of all the banana fairies in the game. And getting that 201st golden banana gives you the designation of 101%ing DK64.
But of course.
Yeah. Of all the games to have an 101% reward, DK64 had to be the one.
Well, why wouldn't it be?
It holds the Guinness World Record for the most amount of collectibles in any platform game, so it's not surprising.
Well, does it? Does it actually?
Someone may have broken that, you know? A friend of mine.
Oh, yeah. I really do need to get around to properly delving into Donkey Kong 64. Just waiting for them to put it on Switch Online, then I'll do it.
Yeah. You hear all sorts of things about DK64, but I'd say it's definitely worth at least just playing through, even if you're not gonna 100% it. It's just a game with a very unique atmosphere.
Alright, taking notes. I think it's safe to say that the N64 was pretty jam-packed full of goodness there.
For sure, yeah. Like, of all the consoles we covered today, yeah, there was a lot on the N64.
It is really a shame that they don't do it so much anymore. Well, I guess like you said about Odyssey, more games are going towards the open world approach further and further, so there's less of a need for them, which I do think is quite a shame, because they always had so much character, things to do, ways to practice. They didn't just serve the purpose of getting from place to place, especially in games on the N64 and the GameCube.
Yeah, there's so much more to a hub world than the basic concept of a hub world, you know?
Yeah, we can pray that one day we'll get it again.
Yep, we can hope.
Same day there's a new Banjo-Kazooie.
Alright, well, I think that's about all we have time for today on this installment of the Loading Zone podcast. So, Mr. Spaghetti Man, thank you so much for starring here as a guest today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
You are very welcome. Thank you very much for having me on, Mr. Broadbean.
And you yourself have a YouTube channel of your own, do you not?
I do. It is, by chance, called Spaghetti Man.
So would you mind telling the listeners out there about what you do on this channel?
So there are occasionally gameplay videos where I show you how bad I am at said game. And for the majority of the time, more so now, I do some scripted content where I try my best to be funny and I throw Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games out the window various times.
I mean, if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. Guys, go check out Spaghetti Man's channel. It will be in the title, in the description. Yeah, cannot recommend this man enough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Broadbean. So kind.
Alrighty guys, that's it for today. See you guys in a bit.
See ya.